Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing They Miss You More Than You Think. Uncover the Hidden Signs. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing They Miss You More Than You Think. Uncover the Hidden Signs. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you might not believe that your ex thinks of you at all. However, the likelihood is that you often cross their mind. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing the 3 hidden signs that your ex misses you more than you think. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is social media activity. Now this can be separated into 2 sub-points, the first of which is what I would refer to as passive engagement, and that is your ex might be silently viewing your social media stories or posts. Now listen, if they view your post and they don't actually comment or react to it, there is no way of you knowing that they viewed your post. You might not be recognizing and realizing that they're even doing this. There might be no way of knowing for certain. But I would say, from speaking to many dumpers as well as many dumpees, that there's every possibility that your ex-dumper is viewing your posts, even though they might not be interacting with them. Now, when it comes to stories, social media stories are a lot easier to attain and understand, but somebody is viewing your stories because if they view your story on social media, you will be notified of that. But what happens if they're viewing the story but still not interacting? Well, in my opinion, this is still a sign that your ex may be missing you, because we don't do anything for no reason at all. There's always a reason we do something. You don't have to view somebody's story that you want nothing more to do with. I mean, I'm not suggesting that they definitively want to get back into a relationship with you, but certainly you're crossing their mind and they want to see what you're doing, how, where, and why. Now, obviously, if they viewed one of your stories ever, it could have been some type of mistake where they was viewing a different story and it just moved straight into yours. That's possible. But if your ex is viewing your stories on a somewhat regular basis, that's no accident. Now, while they might not actually actively like or comment, their consistent presence in your viewers list can be a subtle hint that they're thinking of you and or missing you. Now also, the second part of point number 1 that I would like to speak of is indirect references. Your ex-dumper may post song lyrics, quotes, images that reflect memories or emotions related to your relationship. And if they do this could possibly be hinting at their feelings without giving you direct communication. Now, I always warn dumpees, be careful what you post. If you're feeling down and sad, you might naturally want to post some sad song lyrics. But don't do that, because if you do, your ex-dumper is going to have a viewpoint into your mindset. Now, this can work the other way. So your ex-dumper might have these same pulls, emotions, feelings that they want to express, but they're probably a lot less likely to have somebody such as me in their corner, just as you do, trying to encourage them not to do this. Okay, so you have myself trying to prevent you giving your thoughts and feelings away to your ex. Your dumper is less likely to have that happen. I speak with dumpers, but a lot less dumpers than dumpees. And the reason for this is that dumpers are much less likely to seek support. So what we can see here is that your dumper is much less likely to be encouraged not to post their thoughts and feelings in this way. So if you see an indirect reference where your ex-dumper is posting those song lyrics, quotes, images, maybe they connect to you directly, maybe it is a bit more subtle, then you can take from this a strong possibility that your ex-dumper is thinking of you, and that can certainly evolve into missing you. Now, I don't want you going down a rabbit hole of where you're starting to believe things which aren't really there. Sometimes dumpees can try and draw conclusions to elements which don't really mean an awful lot. We have to make sure we live in reality and not muddle this up with fantasy. So although I'm suggesting, but you can look at for signs and clues, I don't want you going down such a deep rabbit hole that it seems like you're trying to be a code breaker and to match up why your ex has done this and what this means connected with you. Often, if it's too complex a formula that you have to create to connect your ex's behaviour to you, then sadly, it's generally speaking not as strong a link as you may have thought. So this is where we have to be a bit careful in how we go about this. I don't want you becoming obsessive. Generally speaking, I would suggest that you don't check your ex's social media. All I'm saying is that if it's in your face and you do see certain things, or maybe you're told something by a friend of a friend, for instance, then maybe you can see a sign. But I do not suggest that you seek this out. If your ex views your stories, that's one thing, but you shouldn't be viewing theirs. Only find this information out if it's somehow put to you in a way that you couldn't avoid it. But if you check your ex's social media, you're likely to feel a lot more anguish, and it's likely to hold you back more so than if you don't check. So although it can be a sign, it can be a clue, don't go seeking it, and also please be careful that you don't draw fanciful conclusions. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is changes in social patterns. Now again, we're going to be splitting this into 2 subcategories, the first of which is avoiding new relationships. So if your ex is noticeably avoiding new romantic relationships or not showing interest in dating, it could be a sign that they are still hung up on your past relationship. And this is something which dumpees just don't believe can take place, but it absolutely can. If your ex-bedumper is feeling a level of feeling towards you, which they just can't get past to move forward and date new people, this shows that there's still enough romantic emotional attraction they're feeling towards you to not even move forward in that direction. Now, listen, dumpers will often go out into the world by themselves and try dating. Again, they're going on their own path, their own journey. But sometimes we do see instances where a dumper doesn't do any of this. And it could be a sign that they're needing that time out to really consider their position and maybe conclude that they have stronger feelings towards you than they even imagined at this stage. Now again, linked to point number 1, how you were to find out about this, well, I don't suggest you seek it. I don't want you chasing this information. Now if it becomes apparent, somebody tells you without you asking, then fair enough, you can draw your own conclusions. But please, again, don't check your ex's social media. Don't try and find out in other ways. Even if you're asking friends of friends, that's not likely to help you. This is information that could fall into your lap rather than you actually going out and looking for it, because if you do, it's likely to hurt you and prolong your suffering. So please, don't do this. Don't chase this information. Now, the second sub-point for point number 2 is that they might frequent shared haunts. Now, what I mean by this is that your ex-bedumper might start visiting places that both of you used to go to. This could be suggesting that they are revisiting memories or hoping to actually encounter you indirectly. Sometimes we see this with examples such as the gym. Maybe where you live, there are 2 or 3 different gyms, but your ex keeps continually using the gym that they know you're going to be in. Now, this is a fine line because, once more, I don't want you drawing the wrong conclusions. We can't guarantee your ex wants you back just because they go to your gym. But what we have to ask ourselves is, why are they doing this? Now, maybe they would argue and suggest and say, well, this is where I like to go and I don't want to go anywhere else. But you have to realise and recognise that if there are other options and they truly, genuinely don't want to interact with you, wouldn't it be easier if they just moved to another gym? Now, you have to use your common sense. Okay, if you know that your ex-bedumper has a gym membership which lasts 2 years or whatever it may be, they're not likely to spend money on another gym. Okay, we've got to use our common sense on this, but you can look and try and understand the patterns of behaviour and what you think is a bit strange, a bit unreasonable, a bit what you wouldn't expect for somebody who supposedly doesn't want anything to do with you. Now, of course, it doesn't have to have anything to do with a gym. It could be any potential quote-unquote shared haunts. It could be the type of place you ate at. It could be the type of place that you just hung out at and spent some time. Again, maybe they would argue that they just love this place, but Do they really have to go there if they know you're going to be? It's just something to consider. Again, please don't look for this, but if the information lands in your lap, or if you're there and your ex-bedumper appears and approaches you and starts having a conversation, we have to ask, why are they doing this? Did they need to do this? Don't jump to conclusions, but please just stay aware of that possibility. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about they miss you more than you think. Uncover the hidden signs. And point number 3 is mutual friends insights. So you are likely to have mutual friends with your ex, or at least many of you will. And I always say that if you are really struggling with your mental health, you may need to tell this mutual friend, please don't give me any updates about my ex. And listen, you've got to be honest with yourself. If you're in that position, if you are really, really struggling, then this can be a huge help. Because if you don't ask your mutual friend not to tell you, they might tell you. Maybe it's passively, accidentally, maybe it is deliberately. But if you're struggling, ask them not to update you. Additionally on this, I don't suggest you tell a mutual friend anything which could get back to your ex, because trust me, it will. If you have thoughts and feelings, if you want to talk things through, make sure you are speaking with somebody who doesn't have direct contact with your ex. But with all of that to one side, your mutual friends could have some insights which show clues that your ex-bedumper is thinking about you, that they're missing you, and these are certainly some hidden signs. So potentially it could be just a remark, a comment, a conversation. Friends might mention that your ex asks about you or brings you up in conversation, indicating that you are still on their mind. Now, they might be worried about you, they might be thinking of you in a concerned way rather than a romantic way, but it's certainly possible that if your ex-bedumper is continually asking about you, especially, I would say, number of months post-breakup, when those feelings aren't as raw, and they aren't likely to be as concerned about your well-being, because that is likely to be straight after the breakup. If this is happening beyond a few months, we have to consider whether or not this is a sign that your ex is missing you. It absolutely could be. On top of this, it could be an emotional reaction that your friend of a friend, that your mutual friend tells you about. And what I mean by this is that mutual friends might observe changes in your ex's mood or behaviour when your name comes up, such as becoming quiet, nostalgic, maybe even upset, or potentially smiling. Being very much different to those elements, maybe not upset at all, but instead very enthusiastic and wanting to speak more about you. Now, I would say the clue here is being emotional at all, whether it is seemingly sad emotions or happy emotions, emotions or emotions. When people ask me, what is the opposite of love? It's not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of love is indifference. And when we consider that fact, what we can tell here is that if your ex-bedumper is showcasing emotion, feeling, care, wonder, then this is something which shows that they're not indifferent. If they're indifferent, they're not going to be bothered. Months down the line, they're not going to want to speak about you, but if you come up, they might be just kind of pleasant about it and then move forward. They're going to just be moving on with their thoughts, with their conversation. They're not likely to delve in deep. They're not likely to show emotion, whether it's shedding tears or laughing, joking, having a big, great smile on their face when they hear your name. So, if your ex-bedumper is showcasing an emotional reaction to mutual friends, this could absolutely be a sign that they're missing you. Now, whether or not you want your mutual friends to tell you this information, again, that is down to you. You've got to be very, very careful with your mental health. And we can't guarantee that your ex-bedumper will showcase any of the things that we've just been speaking about today. So it is important that you don't think, well, I'm really struggling and suffering here, hearing updates on my ex, but I want to keep that door open in case something like this comes up. Because it's not going to help you if it doesn't happen. And even if it does happen, it doesn't necessarily mean your ex-dumper is exactly ready to come back to you. And that's the key here. Even if your ex-dumper is showing these signs, it shows that they are likely on the way to wanting to reconnect, but they're not ready yet. Because when they are ready, they'll reach out to you. When they are ready, they will speak to a mutual friend likely and ask what their thoughts are, or how maybe they could pass on a message. So we have to recognize that all of these signs in today's podcast are positive signs, but unless your ex-dumper reaches out to you, they haven't regrown enough romantic emotional attraction to make this the next step forward to getting back together. So even if you see the signs, yes, that's great, but it doesn't mean that you can jump the gun and message them. You can't be doing this. You can't be reaching out to your ex. In most instances, I strongly suggest that if you've been dumped, you should never contact your ex again unless they contact you first. And therefore, signs are great, but the biggest sign is when they actually reach out to you for an unnecessary reason. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.